your Twitch account. I haven't been on there in forever because I don't think you've been doing anything. But
yeah, I have not been doing anything, mostly because I've been ungodly busy. But that doesn't matter. Anyway, we're live. We're live. So, hello, my name is James McCool. I'm the owner of PatriotDFS.com. I will be joined by Tribe over here and Jason over here. We're going to be doing a Week 10 NFL DFS slate talk, talking over game theory and kind of like macro concepts, really. This is not the stream for like just picking players. That stream happens, that's the bakery. That happens on Thursday, gets loaded onto the YouTube on Friday. If you're not already subscribed to YouTube, then you should be, but regardless. But we are going to be using some leverage and game theory analysis to talk about the NFL Week 10 DFS slate. We're going to be using a lot of the models over at Paydirt. So if you have a subscription, follow along. If you don't have a subscription, go to get a subscription. Without further ado, Tribe, how are you doing today?
I'm good, bro. Just grinding college football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, college football. We were talking a little bit about it off air, but pretty crazy ownership swings today. Nothing to add there, Mr. Tribe.
Not unless Clemson remembers how to play football, man.
But that's it right there. You say, yeah, I need Clemson to remember how to play football. That's it right there.
Sure.
That's the league.
Yeah.
Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm wondering why fucking Army, when I have them -6 and they have a 30-yard chip shot to end the half, they run a fake field goal rush attempt, and now we're not covering going into the second half. So that's what I'm wondering. But I'm ready to talk Week 10. So
all that matters is that they cover at the end of the game, though, right?
Yeah, but like they get the ball at the second half to start, so like they could have made this a much bigger lead, and they're getting whatever they want offensively. It's whatever. It's no big deal. But yeah, we'll cover at the end of the game. Hopefully,
we will cover it. So this is mostly an unscripted one. We don't really talk about this beforehand, but there are a couple things on the slate. So I've written now 2, 3, 4 articles, I think, for this slate. Articles, 2 newsletters and 2 actual articles. And one of the things that I'm finding as I've been going through a whole lot of, thinking through who I actually want to play and who I should play and who I have to play and kind of leverage spots. There are a couple things that I think make sense. One, Justin Jefferson makes sense. I don't really see too many ways to get away from him. When you use the range of outcomes over at Paydirt, like he has a median projection that is nearly 5 points higher than any other wide receiver on the slate. It's just a terrific matchup. And for the most part, like I can't justify going to CeeDee Lamb at 8,600 with Cooper Rush at QB, even though I don't think that Dallas stacks are the worst thing you can do this week. I can't justify going to CeeDee Lamb. There's, AJ Brown projects well, but not near as well as Justin Jefferson, and you don't get that much of a discount for it. I am finding it really hard to get away from Justin Jefferson. All of that said, ownership isn't really that high on him in terms of projections. When I reran projections this morning, I just don't see all that much high ownership on him. I'm projecting 13% ownership on him right now. I can't figure out why people are not just jamming in Justin Jefferson here. It looks like people are mostly just sitting in the mid-range. There's a lot of ownership on Khalil Shakur. Okay. Josh Downs, which I think makes a lot more sense than Khalil Shakur. But overall, like, what do you guys think about this Justin Jefferson spot and the wide receiver ownership overall? I guess I'll kick it to you first, Tribe.
I think it's a great spot for him. I can see kind of like the general narrative being, oh, they have other weapons. Aaron Jones on the ground can get there. Darnold doesn't throw it a ton, so it's not going to be a high volume passing game. It's going to be an efficient passing game. And, you kind of play this angle where you're more or less trying to predict outcomes, which I don't really think you should be trying to do, but where you think Justin Jefferson goes for, 600 and a touchdown, which is solid, right? We'll take it. But that's not significantly more than the ceiling of any of these other guys at receiver, particularly in the higher range, right? And so you hope that one of those other guys can match that. But I don't really know that you need to do that. The other thing I could also see is because people really want to spend up at running back this week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like running back is just always perceived as like the safer option as opposed to the wide receivers.
Yeah, to your point of like 600 and a touchdown and that not being that much higher than everybody else. I mean, I I just think that 100 and a touchdown is probably less than his median in this spot. I mean, like that would be a disappointing outcome, I think, for Justin Jefferson in this spot against Jacksonville.
I don't
just
disagree.
you don't disagree? Yeah, I like for reference, here's what the pay dirt models are showing as a little treat because we never live stream this on Twitter. But this is what the models look like for pay dirt for wide receivers this week. And it's like Justin Jefferson is nearly 5 points higher in median and has a 10-point ceiling gap above AJ Brown. Like a decent outcome for him, I think, is a median expectation for nearly every single other wide receiver on the slate. And if he is able to do what I think he's able to do against this Jacksonville defense, I don't see a way for him not to have like 25 plus fantasy points most of the time. Like obviously there are ways for him to have floor outcomes, but a floor outcome for him, I think in this spot is legit like 18 fantasy points. Like I think that he just this is such a good spot. Jacksonville gives up so many more fantasy points above expectation, like 6.2 fantasy points above expectation to opposing wide receivers. They're a sieve on defense. They are reeling and likely are going to put Mac Jones out there. Like team morale is going to be bad. It's just such a good spot. What do you think about Justin Jefferson in this spot, Jason?
Yeah, so the one thing that's interesting about him is that we also have him as the fifth most valuable wide receiver at his current salary. He's fifth in the 4X column on the range of outcomes. So, I understand that he projects like a god. The other thing I will say, though, for him, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't play him, to pay $8,800 for a guy who has seen 10 targets once this entire season, and he's been in some equally just as good spots. Like he went up against Indianapolis, he went up against the Rams. Green Bay hasn't been great through the air. He's played against these other teams where he's had plus matchups, and they just haven't needed to really do that, right? So even in close games, he hasn't really seen that. So I think with where the value is on the slate this week, if I can get to him, I will, but I'm not going to go out of my way to do it. And also, I think he needs to have an extreme game to like really, really kill you and not have him. We just saw Saquon last week go for 36, 37, and I feel like some of these running backs have inherently, a similar ceiling, if not a higher ceiling, in similarly good spots. And outside of like the ownership discount, I don't know how much I'm really going to get to him unless we have more value opening up. Don't get me wrong. In every Darnold stack, he's a lock. If you're going to, play the indie side of that game, I like him in a bring back. I find it very tough to click his name when a guy like Garrett Wilson, who's going to see 10 targets, is 1,600 less than him. It's a little bit harder for me to swallow.
To be clear, I totally hear you on him not having like the target floor that he has had in the past. I have acknowledged that the Vikings are not as pass. I mean, they're similarly pass heavy in terms of their upside. Their expected passing touchdowns are typically higher on the slate than most other teams, but their volume has just been lower. And they haven't needed to push the envelope quite a bit. So I hear you on both of those things. I do think that one of the things that none of us have mentioned yet is that it is just incredible leverage off of Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is projected to be about 30% owned on the slate, I mean, like massively highly owned. And sure, I certainly recognize that and think that is a fair play. If I were to build out the normal 3 to 5 lineups that I usually build out, Aaron Jones would be in 60% of them or whatever. He would be in 2 out of the 3, or he'd be in 3 out of the 5. But then in that third lineup, I would absolutely have Minnesota stack, and I would absolutely be spending on Justin Jefferson. Because you get that added benefit of the relative value and the direct leverage that you get on Aaron Jones. Whereas if Aaron Jones is not the one scoring touchdowns, it's probably fucking Justin Jefferson. So I think that that's really important to put into this. Like, sure, I think that the floor is lesser for Jefferson than it has been in the past, but that median expectation of about 20 fantasy points is still there. And he can still absolutely, like, nobody would be surprised, even though he has not had 10 targets yet this season, or he's only had it once. Nobody would be surprised if he had 9 targets, 8 receptions, 160 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like, Jacksonville can't cover anyone. Nico Collins absolutely murdered Jacksonville a couple weeks ago. Like, lit them on fire. It's a similar spot for Justin Jefferson. And all of us were just like, yeah, I don't know how you get away from Nico Collins in that week. And granted, Nico Collins was 7,200 that week. Justin Jefferson's much more expensive. But I also think that the value is there to make it work. Like, we have Adonai Mitchell, we have Sterling Shepard, we have cheap tight ends, we have a cheap quarterback. Darnold is like 6,200. So I think that the value is there. I think the matchup is terrific. I think that the ceiling is terrific. And I think the relative value is really, really good. So Justin Jefferson is kind of, if you're not playing Aaron Jones, I think you have to be trying to get to Justin Jefferson. And I guess that's probably where I'll leave that. Do you guys have other thoughts kind of on wide receiver ownership? Like, if we're looking at the ownership as it stands right now, like the highest ownership is going to be DeAndre Hopkins for sure. 5,300 playing against Denver. He had a great role last week. I don't remember off the top of my head what his target share was, but it was really, really good. Projected at 27%. And then Khalil Shakur, I don't know if I want to play that much ownership on him. Like, I get it. The matchup is fine, but I think that this is kind of, people are saying, oh, there's no Keon Coleman and there's no Amari Cooper, so Khalil Shakur is going to all of a sudden have a 30% target share, and I just don't know that I buy that. He projects pretty well, but I don't know. Like, let's go use the pivot finder really quick and see if I should actually be playing him. I didn't run the pivot finder on Khalil Shakur earlier this morning or last night, but I don't know. While I'm getting ready to run this, like, Tribe, do you have any thoughts on Shakur?
I'm good. I'm good on that. Like, I get it. Like, I think people want to play Josh Allen, right? The spot is good overall for Buffalo. People want to play Josh Allen, but especially in GPPs, I think people are really hesitant to play a quarterback naked, so they're going to force a stacking partner. He's the only guy that makes sense, and I think that's inflating his ownership. I mean, obviously, we got the injuries at the wide receiver position, but to be honest, I love James Cook in this spot. I think James Cook is phenomenal leverage given the ownership that we're projecting for Shakir.
Yeah, I ran the pivot finder. I ran on 300, and we had Josh Downs, Ladd McConkey. You're not pivoting to Josh Downs, like, he's going to be just highly owned. But you could pivot to Ladd McConkey for sure. He's $100 less, projects for within range of Shakur, within 3 fantasy points. And then when you reach it to 500, you get Darnell Mooney there as well. And Darnell Mooney is in a pretty good spot. I would look at Darnell Mooney as a considerably better leverage play than Ladd McConkey and Josh Downs, obviously, because he's only projecting for 6% ownership for $500 more. And that's not really that much. Like, when you're thinking about leverage, when you're thinking about pivots, this is what you should be doing, is using this tool to figure out who's within range. But when I look at this, his LevX is still okay. I mean, it's neutral. You're not gaining anything from it, but it's not like it's heavily negative. At 26%, I think that this is kind of one of those weird spots where, like, usually when you think about a wide receiver and you see this much ownership, you're like, oh, well, if I'm going to use them, I had better use them in the stack because it's going to be lower ownership. But I actually think you're right, Tribe. I think that most people are going to be playing them with Josh Allen. And I think that most people are going to be using him as that stacking piece, and it would actually be smarter to use him as a one-off. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, so with Khalil Shakir in general, and I'm going to make 1 point projection based, and I'm going to make 1 point that's more just like game scheme theory based. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right too. I think Tribe's right on the money. It's definitely going to be paired with Allen. It doesn't make sense to one off him, and people are either going to play that combination or they're just going to play Josh Allen naked. For a guy like Shakir, I know people think that the Keon Coleman absence, as you said, is going to give him an increase. It actually doesn't affect him whatsoever. Like he plays out of the slot really exclusively. Keon Coleman is an outside guy. I think a way you can leverage it, and again, this is more scheme based now. I really think you can go to a guy if you're going to stack Allen. You could try and take a shot on a cheap Matt Collins who stepped into all that work on the outside. I even don't mind that, stacking Josh Allen with Amari Cooper, right? If Amari Cooper plays, like they just traded for this guy. He's their new shiny toy. If he plays, he's $200 less than Khalil Shakir. And he's in a pretty good spot here also. So from a projection standpoint, though, I agree. I think going up to like DJ Moore or Darnell Mooney makes the most sense. Lad McConkey, I think, is fine too, but I just think there's guys around him where you don't have to eat him by himself. And if you're playing him in a Josh Allen stack, you should probably make it within a double. Like go him and Kincaid, or him and Matt Collins, him and James Cook, something like that. I don't want to eat him by himself though. I just see 7 for 70 and not scoring a touchdown like on the horizon. And
I think Matt Collins is a sick play.
Me too.
300. I mean, Matt Collins, he's shown that he can actually kind of ball out. Like he did okay in Atlanta for a couple of years. Like we've seen him do okay. I think it was with the Raiders, maybe with Raiders. Yeah. I think Matt Collins is a pretty sick play. He's 3,300. He's projecting right now for 12% ownership, which is not nothing. But I mean, I would take the under on that ownership even.
I think it helps you get JJ too. Helps you get JJ.
Yeah. So I think Matt Collins is an interesting play. I also think that at ownership, I'd rather have Curtis Samuel than Khalil Shakir. We've seen Curtis Samuel be able to put up pretty big scores when he's kind of like the only guy around as well. So I don't think that I would be wanting to eat Khalil Shakir ownership. Now, granted, this is a game theory podcast and this is a game theory show. So I will preface or I will give a little caveat here. If your ownership can eat or if your lineup can eat the ownership for Shakir, fine, go for it. Whatever, I don't care. If you're playing small field and you already have plenty of relative value, like you have a Minnesota stack and you're using Ricky Pearsall, who I kind of want to talk about a little bit later. Like if you're doing those things, just jam in Khalil Shakir and DeAndre Hopkins and round out your ownership. Like you don't need to gain more relative value than necessary, but in large field stuff, I think that there's really not much reason to play Khalil Shakir. Maybe you play him in a Buffalo stack or as a one-off, just like, I don't know, because you just love him that much. But he's kind of an optimizer play, and I'm not super about it.
I do have a way you can leverage him, though, if you do want to use him. I have thought of another way. When you look at our range of outcomes and you sort the wide receivers by 4x, we have 2 Indianapolis guys on the other side as the 2 of the 4 most valuable wide receivers. Just play a Flacco stack with those 2 and bring him back. Like if you really have a really strong indication of him. And the reason why I say that, and I don't want to say like Flacco's a great play, that's not what I'm trying to accomplish here, but Buffalo is going to score on them. They have a healthy team total. And also on defense, Buffalo does not blitz. They do not get after the quarterback. And Flacco tends to have a much easier time hitting his receivers when he's not, under pressure. He's been like that his whole career. So I think a way you can leverage it is just play an indie stack.
Yep.
Play an indie stack.
I'll buy that.
Play, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll buy a Flacco stack. It's 5,500. And he usually balls out when he gets a chance. We've seen it time and time again. He's 5,500. Josh Downs plus Donnie Mitchell. Bring it back to Khalil Shakir, and you can play whatever you want around that. You can
Tribes guy Alec Pierce too. Alec Pierce.
Yeah, you can play Alec Pierce. I don't have any problem with that. I don't think. If you were going to play a Flacco stack, I don't think you need to go Alec Pierce. Like, not doing a Millie Maker, I guess, but like I think if I was going to do it in anything that I usually play, it would be Flacco plus Downs plus Donnie Mitchell plus Khalil Shakir. And that's a lot of ownership, but it's a lot of kind of like weird ownership. It's a weird way to use the ownership.
Yeah.
And then I would just play Justin Jefferson and Alvin Kamara. And that's a pretty good transition, I think, into running backs. Alvin Kamara is projected as so well. It's funny.
Crazy.
Yeah, that median is silly. But
try to find reasons to fade him, and I can't find reasons.
Who else do they have?
Exactly.
What else are they gonna do?
So there's one thing, and like really only one thing I can say on this if you like are going to fade him, and that is if you fade him, you absolutely 100% need to be playing Taysom Hill, because really the only way he doesn't have a ceiling outcome or like smash that is if we just get the random like Taysom Hill 2-3 touchdown game.
I mean, we tried that last week. He put up 16 points and it didn't matter. It's like
I was gonna say, and the player he had 220 yards from scrimmage last week, didn't score and put up like 28 fantasy points.
And they lost the game. It's Taysom Hill, though, by the way, I will say, a little bit of fool's gold. He did have an incomplete pass on like the 5-yard line for a touchdown. So like if he converts that, maybe it's a different game. But yeah, like I just don't know how are they going to move the ball up and down the field? They're going to hit Mason Tipton 10 times? No, they're not. That's not happening.
They don't even have Bub Means. Bub Means is on IR. They have like literally
MVS. They have MVS, Mason Tipton. This guy fucking Jermaine Jackson. That's not a real human being. Taysom Hill, Jawan Johnson, Foster Moreau. Like you want to play the tight end carousel? No, his floor realistically is probably his floor I think is like legitimately 20 DraftKings points, like just on pure volume.
Yeah,
I don't see a way for him to have less than about 10 targets and about 20 rushing attempts. Here's what they're gonna do. They're gonna run a metric shit ton of 2 tight end, like a lot of 2 tight end formations. It's going to be all Juwan Jennings, Taysom Hill, and Alvin Kamara. They're going to run dumb trick plays with them. Like it's going to be awful. Now, granted, the other thing that you do if you don't play Alvin Kamara, because you should probably just play Alvin Kamara, but if you don't,
I love where you're going with this. Just lay it on him. Lay it on him.
I mean, you just slap down the Atlanta Falcons defense. So like you really don't have a choice if you think that the Saints are going to score any points basically whatsoever. If you think they're going to score a touchdown, you got to think that 70% of that equity goes to Alvin Kamara. And if they're going to get into range to score a touchdown, you got to think that like 50% of that equity goes to Alvin Kamara. So Alvin Kamara, his floor is probably something like 25 touches and 120 scrimmage yards and a 50% chance at scoring a touchdown, probably higher than that, like a 60-something percent chance scoring a touchdown. If you think that they just get blown out, then you should be playing Bijan Robinson and the Atlanta Falcons defense.
Yep.
And like just start there. So in an optimizer, what you would do is you would set a rule that says if this lineup does not have Alvin Kamara, then force in Bijan Robinson in the Atlanta Falcons defense. And then that's like a simple rule that you can make that makes your lineup building easier, which by the way, if you don't have an optimizer, you should go use the solver. Paydirt has an affiliation with the solver. You can get Paydirt projections logged in. Good little partnership plug there. But yeah, it's just Alvin Kamara, and he's projected for 20% ownership. I'm not sure it gets higher than that. I think he probably stays somewhere in the 15 to 20%. Because I think that what people will say is Atlanta's not going to be able to move the ball. Christian McCaffrey is back for San Francisco. I'd rather just play him at 8K rather than Alvin Kamara at 8,100. Saquon Barkley is right there against Dallas with Cooper Rush. I think that we're probably going to get a little bit of a discount on Alvin Kamara. I don't think that he will be 19% owned. Tribe, do you have any other thoughts on Kamara in this Saints situation?
No, the only thing I would add to it is, even if you think from an efficiency standpoint, like he's not going to be efficient, the target volume doesn't matter. Like he could have 14 carries for 40 yards and still have 8 catches for 80 yards. And his floor is just massive. So you don't need to big brain this, in my opinion.
So Jason, you come up with some of these galaxy brain thoughts. I saw somebody mention Tyler Algier the other day. Would you have interest there?
It's funny you bring up Algier. The first thing I want to just say beforehand, in case anybody thinks like fading Kamara is a good idea, New Orleans also has a healthy team total for an underdog this week. In the research sheets, we have them for 21.25 points. So if you think they're going to hit that team total, like it's definitely him. I just want to put everybody out there. Like if you're fading him, it's because you're hoping he gets injured. You're not fading him because you think he's a bad play. I just want to put that out there. The thing with Tyler Algier, I like him in certain matchups, and then I don't like him in others. Do I see a world where he gets 8 to 10 carries this week and maybe like vultures a touchdown? Yeah, but I don't think he's cheap enough to really even be in consideration here. Like at 5,200, it's a little tough for me to swallow just when Bijan's just been getting insane work, and he's been getting insane work in games where he hasn't needed to be that good either. Like it's like they got blown out against Seattle, and that game was not competitive for half the game. He sees 26 opportunities. Against Dallas, they're up basically the whole game. He sees 26 opportunities.
Yeah.
I just think Algier is a little thin. I don't think you really need to go there.
I'm fine with that. I wouldn't want to go there anyway. I pulled up the prop betting models really quick, just for a point here. Alvin Kamara is projected for more receptions than Justin Jefferson. First off, 73 rushing yards, 50.6 receiving yards, and has an 80% chance of scoring a rushing touchdown. Basically has, if you include rushing touchdowns and receiving touchdowns, he should be, his odds at an anytime touchdown based on the pay dirt models should be like really high. like negative 500 or something.
It's fucking stupid. It's stupid.
Yeah. Based on that team total, like it's hard to see Alvin Kamara failing in this spot. So let's see. Let's take a step back. Now that we're on running backs here. So we talked a little bit about Alvin Kamara at 8K. I haven't done too much reading of other industry stuff, but do you guys know where the industry's sitting on Christian McCaffrey?
I don't think anybody's really talking about. I think that'll be something we hear about either like it's happening now, like other shows and other content that's coming out now, or we're going to hear about it in the morning, just because I think people were really waiting for like more concrete confirmation that he's going to be playing. I think people are going to want to hear whether or not there's any limitations, any restrictions, any of those things. Assuming that they're not taking any chances with this because it's Super Bowl or bust, and if he's cleared to play, it's because he is cleared to play. Yeah. I would think he would be. Actually, I think our ownership projections are fairly accurate. We got him right now around like just under 14%.
Yeah,
I would buy that. I don't think it gets above 15%.
I don't think so either. I'm seeing a lot of the same stuff. A lot of it is kind of like if he's a full go, I love him. But if he's only going to get 50% of the snaps, he's overpriced. And like that's why I see really everywhere. I think they're waiting for that Schefter bomb to just like hit them and be like, oh, Christian McCaffrey, no limitations. And then evidently he's just going to play 50% of the snaps again. It's also in this matchup too. Like, do you even want to gamble on it? Like, I get Tampa Bay was competitive against Kansas City, but like, do we really think they're even going to need him this week? Like, I don't know, but
it's just I don't know. I'm not trying to predict what happens. He's $2,000 underpriced.
Underpriced?
Yeah. For a full workload, he's $2,000 underpriced. I mean, Christian McCaffrey like breaks fantasy when he is playing it.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
So I don't. So with how well Alvin Kamara projects, I don't think there's much reason to go Alvin or Christian McCaffrey. But if tomorrow when I rerun ownership, if Alvin Kamara jumps more, because he did jump, he was trending up based from Thursday to Saturday. If he jumps more, then that means that he's probably going to be in the 25 to 26% range. If he jumps any more, And if Christian McCaffrey goes down from that 14% and is trending down going into Sunday, I think we see him anywhere between 10 to 12. And at that point, I think that there would be plenty of reason to go with Christian McCaffrey over Alvin Kamara in large field, not in small field, but in large field. If you're getting basically 3-1 ownership on Christian McCaffrey Alvin Kamara versus Christian McCaffrey, I think that that's worth taking a shot. But it sounds like he's probably going to stick there. We'll reassess. The main running back that we need to talk about, that we already talked about a little bit, is Aaron Jones. This is a really, really good spot. And his median is good, and his usage is good. But at 26% owned, I kind of have to think that it feels like there's other running backs that I would rather use, namely DeAndre Swift.
I was about to say DeAndre Swift is right there.
Yeah. Tribe, you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so this is a guy both Jason and I mentioned on the bakery as well. Just DeAndre Swift's role with this team. I think people are still used to him kind of being like that victim of the running back by committee and not really getting a full workload, kind of being a gimmicky player to a certain extent. And, the Bears just aren't a sexy team in real life or in DFS. But when you look at the underlying numbers, like, he has been really, really good this season. We have his median and ceiling, pretty much equivalent to Aaron Jones, and he's going to be significantly less owned. So it just makes a ton of sense, in my opinion. And he's slightly cheaper, a couple $100 cheaper. Just really love that play.
Yeah, I went and I ran the pivot finder here. Keep cutting off my own face. I went around the pivot finder. Aaron Jones, like, he's still a good play. He has the highest median of anyone within $500 of him. But it is worth noting that DeAndre Swift is right there with 16% ownership, and I think he probably stays about there. And I think Aaron Jones has more ownership in the morning. Yeah. So you're probably getting about half the ownership on DeAndre Swift for not even one less fantasy point in median. And then J.K. Dobbins, who I think I'm going to lower his projection because Gus Edwards is back. But that would have been a great spot. Like, the Chargers are healthy favorites over Tennessee, who sucks. They get Will Levis back, who's going to throw 2 interceptions. Like, J.K. Dobbins would have been a smash play, but Gus Edwards coming back, I think I'm a little bit worried about that. And then the other one is Kareem Hunt. And I think that Kareem Hunt is somebody that we should probably talk about, because at 10% owned, he has owned that role for Kansas City. He's been everything for them. DeAndre Hopkins is going to be 30% owned, probably 35% owned, and we're going to see Kareem Hunt at 10% owned, who would be a terrific leverage play. In the same way that we want to use Justin Jefferson to leverage Aaron Jones, using Kareem Hunt at $100 less than Aaron Jones and as leverage on DeAndre Hopkins, that sounds like a sick play. I think that the relative value and the direct and indirect leverage, that's the whole pie put together. Jason, what do you think about Kareem Hunt in this spot?
I think he's good. The one thing I like about Kareem Hunt is that if they get on the goal line, they seem to give him every opportunity to score. So I think it really raises his floor. It's just hard to argue with this guy's volume of attempts. Like, he's 24 to 27 touches every single game. I think he's a fantastic play, and I would much rather go there than Hopkins. And I get that Hopkins is a little underpriced for the role he's seeing, but if you think that they're going to move the ball and they're going to have some success and hit their team total, Kareem Hunt's going to be a part of it. I think he's a fantastic leverage play. I think he's a little bit more unsafe than a Jones or Swift, just because of, frankly, just the lack of pass game work is a little concerning, I guess. But 27 attempts and all the goal line usage, how do you not consider that this week?
Yeah, I'm going to read off his stats here for you. All right. Kareem Hunt. Now, granted, he has relatively low snap participation. All right. So in weeks 8 and 9, he only had 57% of the snaps. But so far, he has had 3 games with 18 and more fantasy points since taking over for the Chiefs. every game has been double-digit fantasy points. In the last 2 weeks, he has had 84 and 81% of the rushing attempts, 36% route participation, 75% of the short down and distance snaps. And for the last 3 weeks straight, he has gotten 100% of the inside the 5 rushing attempts.
It's crazy.
Every single rushing attempt inside the 5. That's a role that I want to buy. Like at 6,600, that's a role I want to buy. If the Chiefs get down inside the 5, if they throw to DeAndre Hopkins has like a 22-yard catch and lands with his feet inside the 3, that touchdown is going to Kareem Hunt. It's not going to DeAndre Hopkins. So that's a sick play, man. Kareem Hunt, I think, makes for probably, I would say Kareem Hunt is the best large field play on the slate tomorrow. I think he's a terrific small field play, but the direct and indirect leverage that you get on top of the relative value that you get, like all of those put together at 6,600 for Kareem Hunt, I think he makes for the best large field option on the slate tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think the other thing, we haven't really like explicitly called it out, but with these teams, right, when you think about who you're fading, you're not fading on the premise of like Kansas City's not going to score points. Like, no, they are going to score points and they're probably going to win this game. Like that is the most likely outcome, right? So it's really trying to figure out, okay, if I'm fading DeAndre Hopkins, like where are the points coming from? Because the points are coming.
Yep.
You do have them. You do have Kansas City too in the upper tier of rushing touchdown expectations for the main slate. Also, you have them first, second, third. Yeah, you have them 5th on the entire Sunday slate in rushing touchdown expectation too. So, yeah, he's got a great role, and I think his floor is tremendous.
Yeah, I'm with that. I think that Kareem Hunt is like the best play. All right, let's see. Let's go through a couple of these things. So, tight end. I mean, this is a week where we've now had a couple weeks where I just think the median projections for these tight ends are fucking sick. They're really, really good. For instance, Cade Otton projects for 16 fantasy points. That would make him, in terms of wide receivers, the wide receiver 6 by projection for me at Pater.
It's crazy.
The wide receivers, he's 5,500 for the wide receiver 6 on the slate. That's really, really good, man. I think that, again, like I said last week, it didn't work out super well, but like I said last week, I think 2 tight end is completely in play this week. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't play a Cade Otton at 5,500 who projects for 16, an Evan Ingram at 5,300 who projects for 14 and has game stat correlation against Minnesota. I don't see why you wouldn't play Travis Kelce or George Kittle, who both project really, really well. They have higher ownership, but like, who cares? Travis Kelce projects as the wide receiver 8 on the slate.
It's good leverage. It's good leverage off of the other chalky pieces in their lineup.
Right, and it's good leverage off of DeAndre Hopkins as well. Like, I think this is another 2 tight end week. Jason, am I insane on that?
No, I'm all for it. I mean, we're saying on the bakery that it's very, very hard to get away from these tight ends this week. And I even think that you could go as far as even saying that I think some of these guys down here are almost more like, if you're going to call them like lockable plays, like if we saw any other wide receiver, even priced at Evan Ingram's price, 5,300 like that, we would be eating that all day long.
Yeah.
Cade Otton, to me, in small field, I don't know how you get away from him. Like, I really don't know how you do that. He's just taking up so much value at that spot. I'm probably going to be playing 2 tight end builds, and I even think that if you wanted to do it, there's even some cheaper options that can help you get there also, like just from a game theory perspective. If Taysom Hill was involved a lot last week, he's going to be involved a lot this week. Hunter Henry has had quite the resurgence since Drake May has come back with his opportunities. I think you can get really creative with these 2 tight end builds. And granted, there's no, fucking 45% on Mike Gesicki this week to kill you. But I love the 2 tight end builds this week. My preliminary builds are all 2 tight ends.
Yeah. Tribe, how do you feel about 2 tight end builds?
So I am famously not a 2 tight end guy, especially in large field GPPs. I just think it lacks the ceiling to really take one of those types of contests down. But that being said, last week and this week, you guys both hit on it. When you look at these guys relative to the price of the pieces around them, right? Like if you go look at the flex options in the same price range, they just stand out. Cade Otton is basically DeAndre Hopkins, and everybody's scrambling to fit DeAndre Hopkins into the lineup when Cade Otton is like the same price with the same projection, and arguably, a better role in terms of just guys who could steal, volume from him. Like you have Kareem Hunt there, you have Travis Kelce there with DeAndre Hopkins, but Cade Otton is probably going to be look number one on like every drop back.
Yeah, who's going to take his targets? Fucking Sterling Shepard, Jalen McMillan.
Right.
Like I'm more worried about those running backs taking targets from him. But honestly,
right.
Cade Otton is very, very hard for me to get away from in general. 2 tight ends are just very strong this week. And I'm glad we touched on that in the Bakery Tribe. I'll tell you, James, Tribe did admit on the Bakery, he goes, 90% of the time I hate 2 tight ends, but this week I got to do it. So I think we're all in agreement.
When people hear 2 tight end, they think 2 punt tight ends. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm talking about, we talked about Khalil Shakir earlier, who's projected for 27% ownership. He's $6K and projects for 15.88. Cade Otton is $500 less and projects for 15.93. Like, they play the same, they do the same thing. Cade Otton is literally a slot receiver for Tampa Bay. It's the same thing.
It's a bias that people have to get over, man. Like people will convince themselves that wide receivers inherently have safer volume and have a higher floor than a tight end, which for these guys that we're talking about just is not true.
Not to mention he's in a better spot too. Like Tampa Bay's going to get scored on. Baker is going to throw the ball 40 times. Like he's gonna throw it a ton. So yeah, I'm with you.
I don't even think that this is a bad matchup. Like San Francisco is not even that good of a defense, right?
They're okay. I mean, against tight ends, they've been a little bit better, but he's not a real tight end. He's a slot receiver, really. Like that's what he does.
Right.
They don't really line him, like they'll line him up on like with a hand in the ground and whatnot, but he's really more of an outside receiver type. And just looking at overall that matchup for him, yeah, he's got a plus matchup this week too. I mean, he's going to deal with Fred Warner, and like, okay, like that's fine. They'll scheme him open, right? That OC in Tampa Bay has been very, very sharp getting his guys the ball too. So they'll find a way.
Well, okay. So this week, I think this week is really, really good. We'll do like some little closing thoughts here, but I think this week is good. I was talking to Pablo earlier who couldn't make it because he has a family or something. But he had mentioned when we were on the phone earlier that he thinks it's going to be a similar week to last week where chalk is really, really good. And there's a lot of really good high on plays. And I kind of disagree with him. I told him that I need to like read through things a little bit more and do a little bit more research. And I think that there are some good chalk plays. I think that DeAndre Hopkins is good chalk. Like if I'm looking through all the ownership, I'll just go through it. Like I think Hopkins is fine chalk at 5,300. I think Aaron Jones is good chalk at 6,700 and 26% ownership. I think that's fine if you're not doing Minnesota stack. I think Josh Downs is good chalk. I think Alvin Kamara is fine. But then you have guys like Khalil Shakir, who I really have no reason to play him. Lad McConkey, I think, is a little bit thin. Like that offense doesn't really throw all that much. I think that Drake London is thin chalk pretty much every single week. James Conner, like that. There's a lot of guys here. I think that there are like 4 or 5 plays that make a lot of sense. And then I think that there are a lot of guys that we talked about that are really, really good leverage and really, really good indirect leverage. You have Justin Jefferson, who's a really good play off Aaron Jones. You have Kareem Hunt, who I think might be the best play on the entire slate tomorrow by like a long shot, thanks to everything that he offers on top of being a decent median play. You have Indianapolis stacks where you can go with Joe Flacco and like use him and Adonai Mitchell and Josh Downs and then bring it back with Khalil Shakir if you want to, or do Mac Hollins. Like that. There's so many ways I think to get away from 2 or 3 or even 4 pieces of chalk this week that I really do think that I disagree with him. And I think this week feels a little bit more like if you're feeling that you want to build more contrarian, I think you absolutely can this week, especially in regards to roster construction. Even if you eat a whole lot of the higher owned players, I think this is a week where roster construction can really help you be different and you can make a lot of choices that feel like they would be too much on a lot of weeks, but I think make a lot of sense this week. Tribe, do you have any closing thoughts on the slate overall?
Yeah. Kind of piggybacking off of what you just talked about, people don't get caught up in like FOMO, right? Because I think where some of that stems from is, say you play Kareem Hunt goes out there and gets 18 fantasy points, and then DeAndre Hopkins goes out and gets 20 fantasy points. Like in that situation, you weren't necessarily wrong. Like that absolutely was the correct move to make in GPPs. But, you know, we've talked about the marble problem, right? Just if more lineups overall in the field have player X, there's a higher likelihood that the winning lineups are going to have that player. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should have not faded that player and shouldn't have pivoted. So just keep that in mind.
Yep. Jason, what do you got?
Yeah, I don't think I agree with Pablo either. I think a lot of the chalk this week is actually a lot shakier than I have felt in the last few weeks, and it's interesting because like a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, like yeah, he's underpriced for his role, but he's going up against a very, very good defense here, and I think people are like he's just an example of that. Like another guy to me that I think is egregious chalk is like Lad McConkey. He's another guy that like I for the life of me can't figure out why he is. Drake London, like you said, very shaky. I think this week more than others, outside of Kamara, I think there's very easy ways to make pivots off of the chalk, where in other weeks there hasn't really been. You'd have to flip an entire game script or flip an entire situation, but you have some really like close salary pivots here that just make a lot of sense. And yeah, I think it's a good week for people who kind of like to prey on game theory and don't just spit out what an optimizer gives them. No shade to anybody who wins that way. I'm just saying I think that there are some landmines out there for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is usually what I'll say. People always ask me good slate, bad slate when it comes to showdown. This is a good slate. I do like the slate a lot. I think that it's much better for large field stuff than small field. I'm much more inclined to, play 10, 20 lineups in the Millie Maker this week than play 3 to 5 and something like the 100, 150 or whatever. But I do think there are ways to build smaller field stuff. My closing thought here will be you should play Kareem Hunt. I think that he's a really good play. I think there's a way to build a lineup that leverages literally like 60% of the chalk in the best way. And I'm going to build it and win the Millie Maker tomorrow. So thank you guys for joining us.
James, didn't you have a thought about Jawan Jennings or somebody from San Francisco?
Ricky Pearsall. I think Ricky Pearsall is a fucking sick play. He showed up in the contest sims quite a bit when I was writing for DK Nation. And at his price, so what was interesting about the contest sims, thank you for saving me. I totally forgot to talk about all this. What was interesting about the contest sims this week is that the two main quarterbacks that were showing up, Brock Purdy, who I expected, he showed up quite a bit, and then Justin Herbert. And both of those guys showed up because there are cheap options to utilize at wide receiver, which unlock the pairing of Alvin Kamara and Justin Jefferson. That's basically what the contest sims wanted to do this week when I was writing. It was like, Justin Herbert's like 5,200, and you can pair him with Quentin Johnson, who I think is 4,800 off the top of my head. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Tribe guy this week. That's our fucking dude, by the way.
Yeah. So you can pair him with him and Will Dissly, who's I think 3,900, either 3,900 or 3,100. I don't remember off the top of my head again.
31. He's super cheap.
Yeah, he's super cheap. He's under 4K. So you can pair those guys, and you end up with this really cheap starting stack that then allows you to fit Alvin Kamara plus Justin Jefferson plus DeAndre Hopkins plus an expensive tight end. And it's like, that's just what the models wanted to do. And the other thing that the contest sims want to do is go Brock Purdy with George Kittle and Ricky Pearsall, not Debo Samuel. Wanted to go Ricky Pearsall. Now, Ricky Pearsall with no Brandon Ayuk should maintaining 60% or so of the snapshot. Juwan Jennings might push him a little bit more on that. They do have other guys that are around Pearsall that could push him on that. But Brock Purdy plus Ricky Pearsall plus George Kittle was a really, really nice base in the contest sims that, again, allowed you to get Justin Jefferson plus Alvin Kamara. And that's the priority combo this week. They just project so well that the models don't want to do anything but just jam them in whenever you're simulating out of field. So that is kind of like a basis of things that I want to do. But it doesn't just have to be with Justin Herbert and Brock Purdy and those stacks, right? You can absolutely do that with an Indianapolis stack. You can absolutely do that even with a Minnesota stack, right? Like Darnold is cheap enough to make it work. But I think that there are ways, and what the contest sims wanted to do was to say, start with a cheaper stack, force an Alvin Kamara and Justin Jefferson, and then figure out the rest. And there's enough value to make it happen. So yeah, I did want to mention that. Thank you, Jason, for reminding me.
Of course.
And with that, if nobody else has anything,
Tribe, you got anything?
No, we out.
Okay.
All right. I want to say one thing and one thing only.
This guy.
No, it's important. I think it's something a note we got to talk about this week. I think more than ever in this week, it's really important to not predict outcomes and just make a few pivots. And if you think chalk is good, find a way to surround it with something that is not as high owned. I think James's point about, the contest sims telling you to pay down at quarterback this week. Also, don't tell James, but Aaron Rodgers is the third most, showed quarterback in our sims. Don't tell him that. But I think that is a really good way. If you follow our sims this week and you just make strategic pivots, I think you could have a way to be very successful. And yeah, I agree. I think it's a better large field week than small field. It's tough to narrow down some of those pieces in small field. I think it's a great large field week. And for the love of God, just fucking play Kate Otten and play another tight end with him. Please do that. And that's it.
I'm using the new little lineup builder here that I built, which I don't know if people have used this, but this thing is fun. So here's a start that you can make that is pretty sick, right? Like Joe Flacco plus Alvin Kamara, Josh Downs, Khalil Shakir, Donnie Mitchell, and then just jam in Justin Jefferson here. And like that costs you 38K. So across 3 more positions, you end up having, 12K to use across that. Choose a cheap defense, and you end up having 5K or so between these two. Cheap tight end, normal running back, choose a defense. That's a lineup right there. I think that's sick. So yeah, I guess that's what I'll close with. Actually, I'm terrible at this. If you're not a sub to the site, you should go be a sub to the site. PaydorDFS.com. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. Obviously active most of the day on that hell site that is fucking Twitter, but active the entire day over in the Discord. You can join the Discord by going to members, going to Discord, free to join, or you can go and subscribe. There's a whole bunch of options. We have month-long, year-long, week-long, and daily. Daily does not re-up the next day, by the way, so it's just straight up 24-hour pass. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We love you. Come talk with us, and hopefully somebody collects some trophies this week and makes it all worth it. So thank you guys so much. Talk to you later.
Deuces.